Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How would you like to do the roll call?
Mayor Steen.
Present.
Councilmember Large Anderson.
Present.
Councilmember Enright.
Present.
King.
Present.
Austin. Jordahl.
Present.
Hagan. Carolyn. We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you then.
All right, this meeting is recorded under the state of Minnesota's truth and taxation laws, which in essence require us to hold a public hearing to let the citizenry know where their tax dollar is going to be spent in 2016, the reasons for the increases over the 2015 tax levy, and just to give the general public a better understanding in a broad overhead view of the city's budgets for the 2016 year. I'd like to impress on anybody, if they're here because they're questioning the value of their property, the increase or decrease in the assessed valuation, this is not the hearing for that. That's actually through the Moore County Assessor's Office. So if anybody's here, just one of their questions is, why did the value of my property go up? We can refer you to the Assessor's Office on that. Within the city's process for the tax levy for 2016, I will get to the PowerPoint in a minute. Just wanted to go through a couple of memos here. The total budget proposed for 2016 that council has reviewed is $29,952,386. This is primarily over 50% made up of the general fund, which is your general operating fund of $15.5 million. The city has a sound financial history. We've got an AA2 credit rating. Both Moody's Investors, a Standard and Poor's Rating Services, has commented on our solid financial operations, prudent budgeting, and available financial flexible liquidity in our recent reviews by the rating agencies. This has been reaffirmed by external auditors. The reason I bring that up is we want to hesitate as much as possible of drawing fund balances down to pay for expenses, because at some point in time you need to catch yourself up. For 2016, the state of Minnesota has certified local government aid to us in the amount of $7,984,340. That's roughly $25,000, $30,000 higher than it was for 2015. So we did receive an increase, which is better than the alternative we've had in some years. Local government aid does, however, though, provide over 51% of the revenue sources within our general fund. So we are heavily dependent on the state of Minnesota to operate the general fund, which pays primarily police officers, firefighters, helps plow your streets, administration, and most of the park and rec operations for the city of Austin. So again, any massive changes from the state of Minnesota standpoint into how they fund LGA has significant impacts on how we operate at the city. Good news is, if you look back 10, 15 years ago, our general fund was about 65% dependent on LGA. So we've been able to wean that down a little bit, but at this point in time, that's where we're at. The proposed levy for 2016 is $4,900,000, which is $575,000 higher than the 2015 levy. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Overall, it's a 13.29% increase in the levy. However, if you looked at our historical growth within the community, 2 to 3% of that increase is paid by new properties, new businesses, new buildings, additions to their property, improvements to their property. In addition to that, for payable 2016, the Holiday Inn area, which was in a tax increment financing district, that district expires on December 31st, 2015. In a tax increment district, the city keeps all the taxes that those entities pay, and we use those to pay off debt service that installed infrastructure to get to Holiday Inn and those properties out there. That infrastructure, that debt is paid off at the end of 2015. The TIF district goes away. So now Holiday Inn, Perkins, Applebee's, a lot of the properties out there will now be paying property taxes, part to the city, part to the county, and part to the school. So our share as a city is expected to be another 3 to 4% of that tax increase. So it all comes down to play. The actual effect to a homeowner whose property did not materially change in value is probably going to be in the 6 to 7% range. Major reason for the increase in the tax levy revolves around council's preliminary decision to add 4 employees to the city of Austin's payroll for payable 2016. For 2016, we're looking at about 143.3 full-time equivalents, which is an increase of 4. One in the police, as a police officer, one as a police detective, one in the park maintenance position, and another one at the nature center to help cover the expansion project and the increase in the expected volume of visitors out there. Part of that $4.9 million levy also includes street projects, street improvements. About $95,000 in a debt service fund to help cover prior debt issues to install streets, and another $1,050,000 is sitting aside in 2016 to help cover other street projects and some trail projects. Treatment plant, industrial user is expected to be billed about $1.8 million for 2016. That's Hormel Foods. In addition, another $1.8 million. In addition, there's user fees from the general public of an additional $3.3 million. As I mentioned earlier, we try to strive to keep our fund balance in the general fund at 42 to 48% of our expenditures. At the end of 2014, we are at 48%. Okay, so we're near the top where council wants to be at. The state auditor has recommended that number be in the 35 to 50% range, so we're within the state auditor's recommendations. Our external auditors recommend in the 40 to 50 range, so again, we're still within those parameters. But when we do get to 48%, we try to look at projects that some of that fund balance could be drawn down for, pay off debt, street project that we'd like to advance, whatever project it might be. During 2015, we did draw some of that fund balance down to help with the Oak Park Mall redevelopment. So, it's not at 48% now. We'll measure it again once this year is closed out. We anticipate we'll probably be in that 46, 47% range once the year is closed out, depending on how the final expenses and revenues shake free. So that's just kind of a brief overview in summary range of what we're talking about tonight. But again, when you look at 4 new employees, average cost is probably $70,000, $75,000 including benefits. You look at the cost of living increase negotiated in 6 of the 8 contracts with the expectation that same increase will be in the 7th and 8th contract. That pretty much makes up for about $575,000, which is your increased tax levy for 2016. Going through the PowerPoint presentation everybody should have, here's kind of our budget timeline. We actually start the process for 2016 in March, where we sit down with council and go through some large spreadsheets showing each department within the general fund or each department that's tax levy supported. So the council and the public that are interested can see where those dollars are coming or where those dollars are allocated to. 60% of our budget is people, salaries, benefits, PERA, those sort of things. So, for the most part, any changes we make are heavily dependent on what you decide for staffing levels. Week of June 1st, budget documents sent out to the departments. Those departments got those requests back to us for the most part by June 26th. Month of July, Craig and myself met with the City Administrator Clark and myself met with department heads to go over the requests. August 3rd and 17th, we brought balanced budgets back to council for your review. September 8th is a statutory requirement that we set a proposed budget and maximum tax levy. We have to do it by September 30th. And we did it at the September 8th meeting. Please remember, you cannot increase the tax levy from what is proposed at $4.9 million. You can only decrease it. So any thoughts of any increased level above that cannot happen this year. It would have to wait till 2017. You've had some work sessions over the last couple months to decide, what are things we wanted to fine tune, what other documents or decisions did we want to look at before we set the preliminary budget or the final budget. So here we are now in bold on December 8th holding our truth and taxation hearing for the residents and citizens and council to hear kind of the final presentation of where their tax dollar is going next year for you to make some final decisions. If whatever happens tonight, whatever the levy or budget is approved tonight or recommended tonight, we'll take that to the December 21st council meeting, where you'll have resolutions to approve. We got samples in the document tonight. And then on the 22nd, I'll send those documents and resolutions to both the county and the state of Minnesota for our compliance with truth in taxation. Next graph, you can see the proposed 2016 budget, how it compares to the tax levy, how it compares to the 2015 levy. Again, up $575,000. You can see each department, or each fund, I should say, where the dependence or where the increase in that tax levy allocation goes. Most of the dollars do go to the general fund to help support your operations along with the LGA. Based on the 2015 payable year, when you pay your taxes to Moore County as a city resident, 35% of that bill comes to us, 37% stays at the county, 25% goes to the school district, and roughly 3% goes to the HRA watershed district if you're in one, etc. And this has been pretty consistent over the years. Anywhere from 34 to 36% is the city share of the tax dollar paid to Moore County. Employees by department, you can see in bold in proposed 2016, 2 new employees in public safety, 2 new employees in park and recreation. There were 2 other employees requested that were not funded. One in the fire department and one as a general building maintenance person for the city to oversee many of our departments. Right now you have the library director overseeing the library. You know, she knows about libraries and books. She doesn't necessarily know about mechanical systems. At City Hall, you know, we have about 2 or 3 of us that can hodgepodge together, but no real experts to look at those things. Again, there's not enough money to go around, so we'll look in future years at potentially bringing them back to council for approval. Proposed revenue sources for 2016, I just throw this graph in here to show you that green bar, intergovernmental revenue, that is primarily local government aid. Of all the sources of revenue we have, fines, forfeits, property taxes, etc., this graph does show you how dependent that LGA number is for us in Austin. The source of the revenue is all funds, again, $29,952,386. Whether it's taxes, intergovernmental revenue, which includes LGA. Down at the bottom, you have enterprise funds, $6.6 million. That is primarily the treatment plant, waste transfer station, those sort of things, where you pay a user fee to have that service. And internal service funds are internal departments that pool money together to pay for insurance, sick leave, both health and workers' comp insurance and property liability insurance, and then sick leave. So we take money from other departments, park it there, and then use that to pay out bills as they come due as kind of an allocation to each department. Again, any questions as we're going, please fire away. Proposed expenditures for 2016. Again, it's a balanced budget, so the proposed expenditures should be $29 million also. Broken out in the same sort of scenario we just had with the revenues. $18.45 million going to the general fund, or going to general governmental services. Tax increment funds, again, are just certain parcels that pay taxes directly to pay off related debt. Then enterprise funds and the internal service funds, as we mentioned earlier. Proposed tax levy by fund, this is taking that $4.9 million and allocating out. Where does it go? 57% to the general fund for your general operating purposes. 19% goes to the library. Library is heavily dependent on city taxes and county taxes in order to operate their $1 million+ budget. Port Authority gets $40,000 a year for their economic development needs. 2% debt service just to pay off some old existing debt for old street projects. And then the capital improvement fund, 21% is for street projects as we finance them going forward. You can see a 10-year history of the tax levy. As you can see, it's only been going up. Now, if you did this graph 10 years prior to that, the tax levy was pretty much flat. But those are the years we were getting $250,000 to $300,000 a year in increased local government aid. The councils at that time said, hey, we're getting all this money to pay for increases, et cetera. We don't need to raise the taxes that much higher. Well, now LGA has been flat Some years been reduced, some years been very little increases, which is why we need to depend on the tax levy more to bring the services that the council is hearing from their constituents that they want to provide. General fund expenditures, $15.5 million in total, whether it's administration at $2.1 million, or you can see public safety, almost $6.2 million between police and fire and the building inspection. We spend a significant amount of cash on citizen safety. Streets and highways, another $3.6 million. That's what helps plow the streets, what helps keep the street maintenance and going along with the engineering department. In addition to that, we spend almost $2.6 million on park and recreation. It's one of your duties under the city charter to provide park and recreational services for our citizens. And capital outlay makes up another $800,000, capital and other, I should say. General administration, this is that first $2.1 million line. You can just see kind of a breakout by department where it goes. Public safety, $4.5 million of that $6 goes to the police department. Streets and highways, $2.5 million by far the biggest source to the streets. It's the largest department that's responsible for the street improvements within the community. And then here's a different breakdown of the different departments that the Park and Recreation is responsible for within the city of Austin. Another general fund, we have contingency set aside at $142.5. We try to get that number at $150 to start each year out. We're a little low this year because of late requests that came in. And then capital outlay another about $667, which includes $200,000 for us in 17 for potential remodel dollars related to the Austin utility side of the building that we're hopefully going to get access to in 2016. Now we get into some of the other funds. We don't spend a whole lot of time on those because they are not tax supported, many of these. Recreation Programs Fund, just over $100,000 in programs the Park and Recreation Department puts on a user fee basis. You're like a member. You belong to the wrestling club or the horseshoe club. And it's in and out, and they get a small allocation from there. But again, none of the citizens' tax dollars go there. Library Fund, $1,168,000 of proposed revenues for the year, $929,000 from our tax levy, $185,000 from the tax levy out in the county for those citizens that don't have access to a library within their community. And there's book fines, interest earnings, etc. Police PRA fund should be close to liquidated at the end of the year, so we don't have a budget for that. Now there might be, $20,000, $30,000 left based on some of the grants the county's got for the tower. But at this point in time, we're projecting that'll be broke. Fire PERA fund, we're proposing about $43,000 worth of a budget there. The fire department and the capital improvement plan has a 3-year program or plan in place to make some upgrades to the fire department, including like some kitchen improvements that are the original kitchen that are within the facility and buckled counters, etc. Economic Development Fund, this is about a $5,000 worth of revenue each year based on some loans we've made on prior dollars that were grants from the state of Minnesota. Not a huge balance there. Debt service funds, this is outstanding bond issues related to things the city has done over the years. I've got one debt service payment remaining, or series remaining for the 2009A bonds. And then I've got redevelopment agreements for some projects in town where it's a pay-as-you-go. They pay the taxes in, we give them the money back based on prearranged agreement. And then 2004B bonds, special assessment bonds, that was for an old street project we did in 2004. Again, we don't issue debt anymore for street projects. We finance it internally through a capital improvement fund. So this is one of the this will be the last improvement bond we've had to pay. Capital improvements revolving, this has about $1,050,000 of tax levy in it to do projects, which include streets, some trails, some sidewalk repairs. I think there's some lights in that budget also, some street lights. Again, this is what's now used to pay for that middle 50% of the street that we are responsible as a entity. We try to assess 25% to one side, 25% to the other. We take care of the middle 50 through this tax levy. Sewer user fund, self-supporting. This again I mentioned earlier. Hormel Foods Corporation is our industrial user. They'll pay about $1.8 million in fees. The domestic side, which is everybody else in the town, will pay about $3.3 million in the budget for services there. And that's again heavily dependent on employees, on people, staff costs, in addition to capital equipment upgrades within the facility. Waste transfer station, we're going to have some long conversations about this in the near future. We now have a rental agreement that's going to net us a total of about $6,000 a year in revenue. However, the facility has upgrades planned, and we don't necessarily want to do those upgrades unless we have a longer-term relationship with whoever's renting it. In the past, Waste Management was giving us $65,000, $70,000 a year when a lot more refuse was going through that facility. When we bid it out last time, $6,000 was the best offer we got, $500 a month. So the use of fund balance, which is primarily capital outlay, we'll work with Stephen Lang in that department to determine whether or not we want to expend those dollars if we don't have a tenant that's going to give us a long-term benefit for those expenditures. Stormwater Utility District Fund, this is on your utility statement every month. You pay a user fee into that. This is, to keep it short and sweet, this is the dollars we collect to try to make the water cleaner as it goes into the river system, then it enters the community. This was kind of one of them EPA mandates that we've had to comply with. It has some employees associated with it, some repairs and maintenance, and some capital outlay, which includes drainage ponds, etc., in order to comply with those requirements. We now, as you know, have one employee 100% dedicated to that program, plus some other employees that work on a part-time basis there and in other departments. Port Authority funds, separate board. They have in essence 3 projects. The Hormel Institute project, which shows we should have net income of $106,000. That's purely on paper. I'm at the end of the program with the Hormel Institute. The first phase expansion, when it's all said and done, we'll have 0 income, 0 loss. There will be literally $0 in that bank account. The general fund, which relies on a $40,000 allocation from your property taxes for the board meetings and for their economic development purposes. Then we have the Walker building with projected net income of $57,862. That is the building that we have must be about 2 years left on a lease with International Paper out in the Northeast Industrial Park. The income generated from that goes into improvements in that facility, but was also used this year to help purchase the Oak Park Mall property. So years and years of $50,000 revenue in there built up, helped the Port Authority acquire the Oak Park Mall property for the redevelopment purpose. So they're reinvesting their money into the community, into other projects. Internal service funds, as I mentioned earlier, we take money from every department, pool it here to do certain projects, so that the street department has dollars set aside every year to buy about $450,000 to $500,000 worth of new snow plows, dump trucks, whatever it might be, as opposed to going out and issuing debt. So each year, based on a user charge basis, we take money from those departments, pool it up, so that every year we've got money to buy the new equipment. Whether it's street department, park and rec, our computers, IT fund, fire trucks come out of here, and we have the insurances that are used to pay the bills related to that. But again, we suck it in from every department. They have to pay their share so that the dollars go out at year end, and we have a pool of dollars available to help upswings and losses. And this year we do project both workers' comp and health insurance will have losses. We'll take losses in those departments. The workers' comp, we've had a bad 3-year rolling claim history, and it's going to cost us some significant dollars above what we usually have in claims there. Same with health insurance. We're projecting we could probably lose another $300,000 in our health insurance fund, but we're working on negotiations for 2017 to help potentially stem that tide. Again, Central Garage Fund, got a couple employees dedicated to it. Big expense, $455,000 for trucks. And again, you should have in your documentation back up the equipment they're looking at buying. Computers, one guy dedicated to that throughout the city. There's some capital outlay, usually it's 20 grand, but we got 65 grand now because we're in need of a new server. Fire trucks, fire equipment fund I should say. The revenues coming in this year should be sufficient for us to set some money aside for bigger trucks, but also in there is a new chief's vehicle for 2016. And then finally, the risk management fund, which is our health insurance fund, liability, workers' comp, sick leave program. Again, we have requirements for when people retire, they get their sick leave paid out. We put money aside every year so that when they do retire, we have money available for it. Mayor, that is a quick and dirty version of the budgets that council has discussed over the last several months. Now, the only other thing I wanted to go through was just a sample of both the resolutions that we're going to be needing tonight and sample tax statements. So in front of you on your screen, you should see some sample tax statements I was able to get from Moore County, which shows just some median valued homes within the community and what your tax increase did to those homes. This first one, the value went from $108,200 up to $108,300. So this was as close as I could find as a home that did not have an increase or decrease in their value. If you went down and looked at the city line, the total tax increase for them as proposed would be $29.82. That's not per month, that's for the whole year, so $30, which is a 9% increase for them. If I go down to the next tax statement, it went from $117,400 to $115,600, so it went down a little bit. This person's taxes went up $24.56, or 6.6%. And the difference in percentage is due to the value of the home and the market value exclusion that the county associates with it. Next one, $176,000, went down to $172,000 roughly. It's a $36 increase, or 5.6%. So I just wanted to kind of show council overall, what dollars we're talking about for the average increase based on the statements we saw. You're probably in the $30 range for the average homeowner. And for that, primarily, you're getting 2 new officers, another park maintenance person, and nature center help. And then finally, the only other thing I need to go over tonight is the proposed resolutions. Again, we would propose to have these on the next council agenda. The first one is to set the proposed tax levy for 2016, and right now has been guided by council. That number is $4,900,000. The second resolution would be to set the proposed budget for 2016 at $29,952,386. And then the final resolution would be a resolution to cancel certain taxes. We've got 2 bond issues where we've told the citizens we will tax you if there's not enough revenue somewhere else to pay for it. Those 2 bond issues, one includes the Hormel Institute project, and one includes the sewer project out in Lansing Township, where we do have the right to levy about $2.4 million of taxes, but we don't need to because we have assessments or another revenue source coming in. So I need council to take action to tell the county auditor we're not levying that on anybody. So at this point in time, that's all I have to do to present to council regarding the tax levy and the budget for 2016. So I'll certainly entertain any questions from anybody that might have one.
Any questions? Well, I want to thank you, Tom. Good job. You need any action by us?
What we usually take tonight is all 3 of those resolutions as a recommendation to move that resolution forward to the actual council meeting. So if somebody wanted to make a motion on each one.
Yeah, as we do them.
So 13, the first resolution would be to approve the tax levy for 2016. I'm assuming 4.9 is your figure. Again, it can't be any higher.
Need a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. These
All
are
right.
motions, not resolutions, right?
Correct,
Motions to move
just a
forward.
motion to move forward. Next motion would be to approve the proposed tax budget at $29,952,386.
So second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And the final one would be a motion to recommend cancellation of the tax levy for those 2 bond issues.
Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That's all I have, just to let the general public know that this again will be on the council meeting on Monday, the 21st, I believe, for the final action. But that's all I need for tonight.
Any questions or comments by council or citizens? Media? All right, now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, man. You're excellent.